There's a woman, we'll call her Emily. She's currently 21 years old and she's been struggling with binge eating for quite a few years now. She's thinking about food maybe 90% of the day, and all she wants at this point in her life is just to stop binge eating so that she can just stick to her healthy eating diet and lose the last 10 pounds and job be done with it. As far as she can see, she's not asking for a lot, but for some reason she battles these intense urges to binge every single day. One of the most common things that she's thinking about is how she had managed to lose weight very, very easily and maintain her quote unquote her ideal weight years ago when she was about 15. She managed to do that pretty easily, stay there for a few months. And so she's thinking, why on earth has it become progressively harder to stick to a diet? She keeps trying the same diet that she did back then, but it's not working in the same way at all. And so she's like, why am I less disciplined than I used to be? Why do I like food so much more than I used to be? What's wrong with me, basically? And so the first thing that she is really, really trying to do is just to simply motivate herself to be really, really excited for more than 2 days to stick to her healthy eating plan or to stick to her diet. She puts things up on her wall. She makes all these plans about what she's going to be able to do when she's lost all of the weight, but ultimately she's not really getting anywhere. Nothing in this video is personal advice to you. There's no way that it could be. I haven't met you. I'm just going to be talking in generalized terms. And please, if you're struggling with your relationship with food and you need professional help and advice, then please do seek that. The last thing that she's going to do is talk to any of her family and friends about this because she feels deeply uncomfortable about the fact that she's binge eating. She definitely sees it as a sign of weakness, as a sign of abnormality, and certainly she is quite ashamed of the fact that she does it. She doesn't think that it's normal and she thinks that it's really quite wrong. So she turns her attention to the internet and asks the internet, how does someone stop binge eating? And the first thing that she comes across is, if you've got an intense craving or if you've got a craving, then make a list of some nice things that you can do instead. Have a bath, call a friend, go on a walk. Emily tries this, and while she's in the bath, while she's on a walk, and while she's talking to her friend, all she can think about is the cookies in her cupboard. The internal stress of, am I going to honor this craving or not, going back and forth inside of her, is just too much. It's very, very overwhelming, and no, she cannot simply just distract herself from it by calling a friend. And actually the only thing that happens is the more that she tries to force it away or ignore it, the stronger it seems to become. It builds and builds and builds until ultimately she snaps anyway, and probably eats far more than she was going to in the first place. Not only this, but she's watching members of her family and friends. They might say things like, oh, I really fancy an ice cream, and then 10 minutes later they've forgotten about the fact that they wanted an ice cream. And she's watching this, Emily's watching this, thinking, what? How on earth do they find it so easy to do that, to just dismiss the craving, when for her the urge and the intensity of it is so strong she can't possibly ignore it? She just comes to the conclusion of, what on earth is wrong with me? Why do I like food so much? Maybe I've got some sort of sugar dependency. So she goes to the internet again, and she has this theory confirmed to her. There's a lot of chat about an idea of sugar addiction, and she's reading through it and she's thinking, you know what, this really resonates with me. I do feel out of control with sugar. I do feel like I think about it all the time. Maybe I've got some sort of dependency on it. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. And maybe the answer is just, you know, like I was going to give up cigarettes. I'll just completely cut sugar out of my diet and go through the pain for a couple of weeks, and then I'll be out the other side and life will be good. Now, Emily does not manage to stick to this the first time around. In fact, it takes her 3 times around before she successfully cuts sugar out of her diet for at least 2 weeks. And something interesting starts to happen for the following few months. What she starts to notice is that the binge eating seemed to go away at first, and then it came back in a really new and different way. What kind of a person wants to overeat on porridge past the point of feeling comfortable, and then add in peanut butter and bananas and fruit, and often something that she would do is eat large quantities of cashews? And she's thinking, what? Why does she feel compelled to do this? She's not even enjoying the food. It doesn't even taste good. And still she finds this compulsion to eat and eat and eat. So Emily goes back to the drawing board, and one day she stumbles across on the internet that binge eating is very much a coping mechanism. So it doesn't matter what you're binging on, it is purely a coping mechanism. It means that you're not managing your stress very well and that you need some serious stress management. This doesn't seem to make much intuitive sense sense to Emily right off the bat. She doesn't consider herself a particularly stressed out person, but maybe she is, and she's just totally oblivious to it. So as the hardworking, proactive woman that she is, she thought, you know what, it's worth a shot. I'm gonna go and buy myself a journal. I'm going to pick up a meditation app, and I'm gonna build this really relaxing, de-stressing evening routine. The evening is when Emily tends to binge. And it would come to the evening, she would make dinner, she's thinking, okay, this is my meal for the evening, you know, it's very healthy, it's well portioned out, this should do me, this should be enough. And then after she finishes the last mouthful, she just does not feel satisfied, but she thinks that she should feel satisfied. It was an adequate portion of food, and now she's thinking about food still. And she tries to then start journaling and meditating, having a bath, putting on some music, but she can't help the fact that she still feels just hungry. She binged yesterday, so how could she even be this hungry today? And she's thinking about how much food she's eaten. She's thinking, this should be enough. The next thing that Emily desperately tries is therapy. She really needs this sorted out now. It's really impacting her quality of life. She can't go out and socialize properly because she's either ashamed of the fact that she is binge eating, or she's worried about how many calories that she's going to eat, and it's already very difficult for her not to gain weight because of the binge eating. And so socializing really stresses her out. She's not feeling good about herself. She feels totally obsessed with food all of the time. So she goes to therapy, and her lovely therapist, who's just such a wonderfully kind woman, very much is advocating for, okay, let's create a healthy eating plan for you, and then explore any emotional side of why it is that you're binge eating outside of that. So Emily goes on to this healthy eating plan. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a couple of snacks in between, just nicely portioned out. She has made some really interesting breakthroughs in terms of her emotional world while she's going to therapy, which she's really grateful for. And at the same time, she's noticing that a common pattern is, say her mum comes over and her mum brings biscuits. Now, Emily was not having a craving or thinking about having a binge or anything like that before her mum comes over with the biscuits. And it was very much her seeing the biscuits on the table that now instigates her to want to eat them. So there's nothing emotional going on there as far as she could tell. And she's thinking, I should be able to go out to a restaurant and order what I want, like all of my other friends get to. I should be able to have pizza without feeling compelled to finish the whole thing and then want dessert and then more dessert. And on top of that, Emily is starting to get really quite stressed because this lovely, healthy eating plan looks brilliant on paper, and still she's leaving her breakfast, snack, lunch unsatisfied and still hungry. She's leaving the meal and she's already thinking about the next time that she can eat. Maybe I am an emotional eater, she thinks, but I'm genuinely hungry for more than this. The next thing that Emily hears about is this: if you're dieting, you're going to end up binge eating. Now, Emily didn't really consider herself a really big dieter or restrictor, and so she didn't really think this applied to her. Mostly what she was concerned with over the past few years was just eating really healthy and portioned control, what she considers healthy and normal. Nevertheless, she explored the idea of, maybe this applies to me. So to make extra sure, she goes onto a calorie counter and inputs her height and her weight and her activity level and says, how many calories do I need a day? And she takes that number, she thinks, fine, this is the number that I'll stick to then. Let's see if this works. Let's see if this stops binge eating. And it doesn't. In fact, there's absolutely no change in the frequency that she's binging whatsoever. And she's thinking, what? She asks her sister, who's got a great relationship with food, who's healthy and fit, weight stable, and asks her specifically, what do you do with food? And then she takes that and she models it, and it absolutely does not work. She ends up binge eating again. Now, by this point, a few years have gone by, and Emily's sense of self-worth, I suppose you could say, has been eroded. She does not have much trust in herself, and she really does not have much of a sense of control. I mean, why would she? She has, as a very capable and intelligent woman, desperately tried to explore and help herself to stop binge eating, to just eat well and to be a healthy weight. She's deeply ashamed by the fact that her weight yo-yos up and down. She doesn't know how to explain that to people. To live a life where she doesn't trust herself or feel in healthy control and feels obsessive about something and having really intrusive thoughts and feeling very hungry and deprived all at the same time and battling this really intense urge to do something really fundamentally unhelpful is horrible. And then she comes across something called intuitive eating, which she had not heard of previously. She heard a woman on YouTube talking about it who seemed very healthy and fit, and she was saying, I'm an intuitive eater. That basically means I eat what I want, when I want, and I'm just very in touch with my body and my body's internal cues. And if you want to stop binge eating, this is what you need to do. So Emily's like, interesting. This makes total sense on paper. Listen to what my body is asking more, rather than thinking what a therapist is saying or what Google is saying or what my calories are saying. Just listen to what my body is asking for. That makes intuitive sense. And if you have some cravings, just go with them, because then you'll just have a little bit and you won't want to eat loads of it. Okay, on paper, this seems like it makes good sense. And so, in a very brave way, Emily decides to try the whole intuitive eating thing. Listen to her body and eat what she wants when she wants. And she finds that she eats a lot. She eats a lot of food in those first few days, and it absolutely terrifies her. I can't possibly be an intuitive eater, she realizes very quickly, because I'm way hungrier than other people. I find it really hard to feel satisfied. My appetite cues are just way bigger than other people's. And I want to eat past the point of satiety. I've got loads of cravings. So if I just eat what I want when I want, I'm actually eating a lot of chocolate. And on top of that, I know I'm an emotional eater because I want to eat when I'm not hungry as well. And that's a really intense urge. So what on earth am I meant to do with that? Intuitive eating sounds lovely on the tin, but in practice, it is so not going to work for me. And on the years go, she now finds herself at 32 with absolutely zero faith that she can have a normal and healthy relationship with food. Her binge eating is very frequent, and she just has to do the best that she can to monitor her food when she's not binge eating. If you resonate with that story at all, the whole purpose of this video is not necessarily to explain to you what you should do next, but to know that that story, you are not alone in that story. And having that story does not mean that you are beyond hope for having a normal and healthy relationship with food if that's what you want. That was my story. It is the story of basically every single woman that I coach to a healthy relationship with food. I can imagine if you resonate with that story, you need a few things which you haven't yet tried or understood. Some of the ones that spring to mind are, you need to understand why you're hungrier than other people and why it's so hard for you to feel satisfied by a normal amount of food. Why do you feel food obsessed? If it's not as simple as not eating enough calories or sugar addiction or emotional eating, then why do you think about food the vast majority of the day? And if you're anything like all the other women that I've worked with, I can imagine that you are unintentionally playing some mind games on yourself that create this sense of lack of control, this sense of urgency around food, these intrusive thoughts around food. I can also imagine that maybe you have scratched the surface of what emotional eating may be, but it has a little bit of a wrap of being perhaps about childhood trauma only, or I feel sad, so I'm going to go and eat some ice cream to feel better, or it's just comfort eating. And actually that's maybe one tiny part of emotional eating. And the truth is that if you want to eat when you're not hungry, typically, without making a generalized statement, but typically it's for an emotional need. And if you haven't explored all of the different emotional needs that food serves for you, then you haven't yet done everything, I assure you. I have worked with some women who thought that feeling certain emotions was bad. So they were trying to numb out those emotions by eating food because they felt unacceptable for feeling them. And they had no idea that they were doing this at all, because it just presented as a craving or a desire to eat. And they thought, well, I just like food too much. I've had other clients who have it drilled into them that food means celebration and reward. So anytime anything good happens, their immediate response is, oh, I kind of fancy something to eat. I kind of fancy a binge, or I have a craving. And they don't know it's happening. If food is one of the few things that you look forward to in your day because you lack excitement in life elsewhere, then why on earth would you ever stop eating? Sometimes we emotionally eat for nothing more or less than because it's a habit, but because our brain expects us to eat cookies when we go home to mum, or to eat pizza if we're going to the cinema. We can induce more cravings by just being weight obsessed by just caring about our weight because we're worried about having cravings, so we bring them on. When I've worked with clients, I have never suggested that they simply stop themselves from emotionally eating. They can, and you can, remove the urge to use food in this way altogether. The urge does not need to be there. And if you still have the urge to binge eat and you think that your best option in life is just to manage your binge eating for the rest of your life, then I assure you that you have not yet got all of the answers about your relationship with food that you need. And on that topic, I can imagine that a lot of the things that you've tried in the past, a lot of it might have had a lot of validity to it, that might have actually been really helpful, but not in isolation. So there's an element here of, if you'd like to have a normal and healthy relationship with food and all of that stuff, some of the things that I mentioned hasn't worked for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work. It might be lots of pieces of your puzzle, as it were, but you might need some extra missing links, and you might need to put it all together to have your healthy relationship with food. Discussing all of that goes far beyond the scope of this video. That's not the purpose of this video. But if you resonate with this story and you're interested in maybe having some one-to-one help with someone who really fundamentally understands where you're at and what you probably need, then obviously I do work one-to-one with clients. I am currently fully booked, but you're very welcome to put your name down on my wait list. And if you're looking for something really comprehensive, then I am currently building a very comprehensive step-by-step online program specifically to help women such as you get to a normal and healthy relationship with food. If you're interested in hearing more about that, then you're very welcome to put your name down on that wait list as well, if that would be helpful to you. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video. Take care, lovely. Bye.